All in the Family wasn't just a sitcom, it changed television forever. With bold humor and unforgettable characters, it tackled real-life issues and touched millions. But behind the laughter were real people, each with their own joys and heartbreaks. In this video, we honor the beloved cast members who've passed, one celebrating their lives, their struggles, and the powerful legacy they left behind. Carroll O'Connor wasn't just Archie Bunker, he embodied the soul of All in the Family. His portrayal of the gruff, bigoted yet oddly endearing father earned him 4 Emmy Awards and redefined what it meant to play the American dad. But behind the laughter was a man scarred by personal tragedy. In 1995, Carroll discovered the body of his adopted son, Hugh O'Connor, who had died of a drug overdose shortly after a final goodbye call. The heartbreak was profound, yet he channeled his grief into purpose, becoming a tireless advocate against drug abuse, even lobbying Congress for the Hugh O'Connor Memorial Law. Carroll worked until his final years, writing under the name Matt Harris and recording Christmas music with country stars. He died in 2001 at age 76 due to complications from diabetes, mourned not just as a great actor, but as a father who turned pain into change. Jean Stapleton brought Edith Bunker to life with warmth, naivety, and unwavering kindness. Her performance won her 3 Emmys and 2 Golden Globes, but the real Jean was far from the soft-spoken housewife. Fiercely private and intellectually sharp, she turned down high-profile roles like Jessica Fletcher in Murder, She Wrote. Her husband, director William Putch, died of a heart attack in 1983 while directing her in a play. Despite her heartbreak, she took the stage that very night, determined not to let the show collapse. John spent her later years out of the spotlight, only returning once at age 79 for a final stage reading. When she passed away in 2013 at age 90, she left behind not only a legacy of laughter but of dignity, discipline, and quiet resilience. As Louise Jefferson, Isabel Sanford represented the strength and grace of Black motherhood in a time when television offered few such images, but off-screen, her life was filled with hardship. She was the only surviving child out of 7 siblings. Trapped in an abusive marriage, she fled with her 3 children and rebuilt her life from scratch in Los Angeles, working for IBM by day and acting in theater by night. Her performance on All in the Family and later The Jeffersons earned her a place in history as the first Black woman to win an Emmy for Best Actress in a Comedy. Isabel died in 2004 at 86, having turned adversity into triumph and inspiring generations to come. Sherman Hemsley burst onto the screen with electric charisma and fiery humor as George Jefferson, becoming a cultural icon in both All in the Family and The Jeffersons. Yet privately, Sherman was a deeply introverted man who never married, had no children, and avoided questions about his personal life, including his sexuality. Afraid his truth would end his career, he kept to himself. When he died in 2012 from complications related to lung and bronchial cancer, legal drama delayed his burial for months. But in the end, he was laid to rest with full military honors, remembered as a trailblazer who redefined the Black man on television, even if his own life remained in shadows. As Irene Lorenzo, Betty Garrett was a trailblazing character, a woman who fixed her own plumbing, challenged Archie's sexism, and held her own in every debate. Her performance earned her a Golden Globe and admiration from a generation of women, but Betty's real-life story was even more remarkable. A former Communist Party member, she was blacklisted during the McCarthy era after her husband, actor Larry Parks, was forced to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee. Their Hollywood careers stalled, yet Betty rebuilt hers from the ground up. She remained married until Larry's death in 1975 and passed away in 2011 at age 91. Garrett's strength was legendary, a woman who fought to have a voice and gave one to others along the way. Vincent Gardenia played Frank Lorenzo, the progressive and warm-hearted Italian neighbor often at odds with Archie's conservative worldview. Gardenia's performance struck a delicate balance between humor and quiet introspection, giving depth to a role that could have been one-dimensional. Off-screen, he was a respected actor with 2 Oscar nominations for Bang the Drum, Slowly, and Moonstruck. But he was also a deeply private man who never married and often expressed a sense of being emotionally isolated, even at the height of his fame. In 1992, while performing in a play in Philadelphia, Gardenia died unexpectedly in his hotel room, dressed and holding the phone. His sudden passing stunned the industry. A Brooklyn street now bears his name, honoring a performer who gave everything but never asked for the spotlight. Mel Stewart's Henry Jefferson, George's older brother, brought intellectual fire and grounded wisdom to All in the Family. Though he only appeared in 7 episodes, his sharp delivery and pointed commentary made a powerful impression. Yet, Mel's talents extended far beyond acting. He was a university professor, a stage director, a black belt in Aikido, and a mentor to none other than Danny Glover. But Hollywood rarely gave him roles worthy of his range. After years of being typecast and overlooked, Mel died of Alzheimer's in 2002. By the end, he had forgotten his own performances. Still, his influence as an educator and pioneer in black entertainment remains, whispered through the careers he helped launch. Mike Evans was only 21 when he made history as the first recurring black character in a major sitcom. As Lionel Jefferson, he was sharp, educated, and quick-witted, challenging racial stereotypes with every line. Off-screen, Mike co-created Good Times, another pioneering black sitcom. But fame didn't shield him from life's cruelty, was diagnosed with throat cancer in the early 2000s and faded quietly from the public eye, passing away in 2006 at age 57. He never legally married, had 2 daughters, and lived a simple, almost invisible life in his final years. His story is a reminder that even history makers can be forgotten too soon. Alan Melvin brought charm and everyman humor to his role as Barney Hefner, Archie Bunker's drinking buddy and loyal neighbor. Though he appeared in just around 20 episodes, his scenes felt like classic American Otwo friends at a bar, wrestling with life, change, and the world around them. Melvin was more than just a sitcom sidekick. He had a rich television legacy, from Gomer Pyle, USMC to The Brady Bunch, and voiced beloved cartoon characters like Bluto and Magilla Gorilla. Despite a long career, Melvin avoided the limelight, choosing to quietly battle cancer in his final years. He died in 2008 at 84, leaving behind a devoted wife of over 50 years and a legacy of laughter in the quiet corners of American television. As Harry Snowden, the kindly bartender of Archie's Place, Jason Wingreen was a calm presence amid chaos. But his resume extended far beyond sitcoms, voiced the original Boba Fett in Star Wars, and had roles in Seinfeld, Star Trek, and The Twilight Zone. Still, by the end of his life, Jason confessed to feeling forgotten by Hollywood. After retiring to care for his ailing wife, Gloria, Jason lived quietly with his son and grandchildren. He passed away on Christmas Day, 2015, at age 95. His life was proof that true talent doesn't always seek applause, it simply serves. As the affable bar owner Tommy Kelsey, Bob Hastings played a subtle but essential part in Archie Bunker's tight-knit world. While his screen time may have been limited, Hastings' presence gave depth and familiarity to the show's working-class landscape. Before All in the Family, Bob was already a household name to radio fans, having started his career in the 1940s as the voice of Archie Andrews in the original radio adaptation of the comic series. He seamlessly transitioned to television in the 1950s and became a fixture in American living rooms through roles in McHale's Navy, Dennis the Menace, and voice work for Batman, the animated series, where he memorably portrayed Commissioner Gordon. Hastings was known in the industry as a consummate professional, punctual, modest, and unfailingly kind. Fellow actors often remarked that he could walk into a scene, say 2 lines, and somehow make them unforgettable. Despite never becoming a leading man, Bob built a career out of being the guy who held scenes together, the glue in ensemble casts. In his later years, he faced a quiet battle with prostate cancer, supported by his wife Joan and their children. When he passed away in 2014 at the age of 89, it was the end of a long and steady journey in entertainment. His funeral in Burbank, California was intimate but warm, filled with old friends, co-stars, and fans who remembered him not just for his roles, but for his gentle soul. Bob Hastings may not have chased the spotlight, but in the hearts of those who knew him, he was always shining. Billy Hallop brought a gravelly warmth to All in the Family as Bert Munson, the no-nonsense taxi driver who served as one of Archie Bunker's closest companions. But Hallop's real story was far more poignant than any character he ever played. In the 1930s, Billy was part of the Dead End Kidsa group of tough, streetwise boys who captured the imagination of Depression-era America. At just 16, he was already a star, appearing in both stage and film versions of Dead End alongside the likes of Humphrey Bogart. But fame came early and left fast. World War II disrupted his career, and the post-war years were unkind. Hallop battled alcoholism, financial troubles, and the collapse of 2 marriages. Offers dried up, and the child star who once lit up movie screens found himself struggling for bit parts and stability. In a remarkable act of resilience, Billy eventually retrained as a licensed practical nurse to make ends meet, a humble and honorable decision few in Hollywood would dare make. When he died of a heart attack in 1976 at just 56, it barely made the news. He was laid to rest at Mount Sinai Memorial Park in Los Angeles, a quiet conclusion to a life that had once been the subject of headlines. Billy Hallop's story is a testament to the hard realities of show business and the quiet dignity of a man who did what he had to do to survive. Few actors have ever started their careers as Lator made them as memorable as Bert Mustin. He first appeared on television at the age of 67 and quickly became one of the most endearing elder statesmen of sitcoms. In All in the Family, he played Justin Quigley, a sweet and slightly daffy neighbor whose stories and smile brought gentle levity to the show's otherwise heavy themes. Mustin's previous life was far from Hollywood. A graduate of the University of Pittsburgh, he spent decades working as a salesman and engineer, content with a quiet life far from the camera. But after retirement, he decided to pursue acting just for fun. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary. Over the next 2 decades, he appeared in more than 150 films and television episodes, including Leave It to Beaver, Dragnet, and The Andy Griffith Show, winning the hearts of generations of viewers. He passed away in 1977, just shy of his 93rd birthday, after living one of the most unexpected second acts in television history. Never married and without children, Bert left behind no family but a legacy of laughter, kindness, and living proof that it's never too late to chase your dreams. With a name like Boom Boom Turner, it's no surprise that Gloria Leroy turned heads the moment she walked into a scene. As the flirtatious barmaid who ruffled Archie Bunker's feathers, Gloria brought cheeky energy and va-va-voom glamour to All in the Family, despite appearing in only a handful of episodes. Her curves, confidence, and comedic timing made Boom Boom an unforgettable side character. But behind the sultry persona was a woman whose life was often marked by longing and loneliness. A veteran of stage and screen, Gloria began her career in burlesque and supper clubs before landing roles on Broadway and in television. Despite her talents, she never broke through into mainstream fame. She appeared in popular shows like Three's Company, Desperate Housewives, and Shameless, often playing bold, brassy women, but her private life was far quieter. Twice divorced and with no children, Gloria lived alone in her later years and often reflected candidly on the roles she played versus the life she led. "I played women full of fire," she once said, "but I often felt like an ember fading out." When she passed away in 2018 at the age of 92, it was in solitude, but not without dignity. Her performances, however brief, continued to resonate. Gloria Leroy may not have been a star in the traditional sense, but she was unforgettable on screen and in spirit. Although most fans remember Sorrel Booke as the flamboyant and scheming boss hog from the Dukes of Hazzard, he left a different, more understated impression on All in the Family as Joseph Sanders, Archie Bunker's no-nonsense personnel manager. In this smaller role, Book brought gravitas and quiet tension, a stark contrast to his usual comedic performances. Behind the camera, Book was a man of extraordinary intellect. A graduate of both Yale and Columbia, he served with distinction in U.S. Army intelligence during the Korean War and was said to speak a dozen languages fluently, including Russian, Chinese, and Yiddish. Those who knew him well described him as a gentle soul trapped in the body of a comic villain. He often expressed frustration that the industry rarely let him display the full scope of his dramatic abilities. When he was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, Book faced it with the quiet resolve of a soldier and scholar. He spent his last years tending his garden, reading philosophy, and making small repairs to his aging home. He died in 1994 at the age of 64. Largely out of the spotlight, his estate diminished by medical costs, but his dignity fully intact. He was a man who could have played kings, but chose time and again to play jesters with depth, with heart, and with unmatched humanity. As Hank Pivnik, Danny Dayton added a familiar dose of barstool sarcasm and blue-collar honesty to All in the Family. A solid character actor with a gift for dry delivery, Dayton embodied the kind of working man who both challenged and mirrored Archie's worldview. But Dayton's own life was filled with deeper contrasts. Born Daniel David Seagal, he got his start as a nightclub comic before serving in the USO during World War II, entertaining troops overseas. After the war, he transitioned into acting and directing, with a career that spanned everything from The Twilight Zone to The Love Boat. However, a horrific accident in 1960, when a car he was driving was involved in the death of a young girl, cast a long shadow over the rest of his life. Though never criminally charged, Dayton carried the emotional weight of that tragedy for decades. By the 1980s, his career slowed and he quietly disappeared from the Hollywood scene. He died in 1999 of complications from emphysema at age 75. He left behind 4 children and a lifetime of nuanced performances. His legacy is bittersweet, a career touched by laughter, pain, and perseverance, and a man who never stopped trying to atone. In All in the Family, Scott Brady's role as Joe Foley was brief but effective, tough, gruff, and unapologetically conservative, much like Archie himself. It was a character that suited Brady, who was once pegged as a rugged Hollywood leading man in a slew of post-war westerns and crime thrillers. Born Gerard Kenneth Tierney, Brady's rise in the late 1940s was fast and promising. With matinee idol looks and a steely stare, he starred alongside giants like Joan Crawford and Barbara Stanwyck. But behind the camera, he struggled with a gambling addiction and a rebellious streak. Legal troubles, including arrests and lawsuits, followed him throughout the 1950s. Studios grew wary, and the offers dried up. Though he found modest success in television in his later years, the roles never matched the promise of his early career. He died of respiratory failure in 1985 at just 60 years old, largely forgotten by the industry that once championed him. His funeral was small, a quiet affair for a man who once lit up the silver screen. Brady's life became a cautionary tale of how fame can be dazzling and fleeting, and how one wrong turn in Hollywood can mean a lifetime of trying to find your way back. Dennis Patrick's turn as the refined and enigmatic Gordon Lloyd brought a sophisticated energy to early episodes of All in the Family. Though the role was minor, it exemplified the type of smooth, upper-class gentleman he portrayed in countless television appearances. Patrick's career was one of astonishing volume, over 1,800 credits across decades, from Dark Shadows to Dallas. He was a go-to for soap operas, thrillers, and detective dramas, a versatile performer who quietly built one of the most prolific resumes in television history. But his life off-screen took a tragic turn in his final years. In October 2002, a fire broke out in his Hollywood Hills home. The blaze consumed everything. Patrick, along with his beloved poodle, perished in the flames. He was 84. The fire was ruled accidental, likely caused by an electrical issue, but the loss was enormous. His wife, actress Barbara Kaysen, had died more than a decade earlier, and since then, he had lived in increasing solitude. His passing barely made headlines despite his immense contributions to the medium. For those who knew his work, Dennis Patrick remains a symbol of classic television's golden age actor who was always there, always reliable, always ready to give a scene that extra touch of class. As Father John Majeski, Barnard Hughes brought warmth, intelligence, and moral complexity to All in the Family. In Scenes with Archie, he played the patient spiritual guide, gently challenging bigotry without condescension. It was a role perfectly suited to Hughes' thoughtful, deeply human acting style. Hughes was a stage veteran who didn't achieve mainstream recognition until later in life. He served in the U.S. Army during World War II and returned to become a towering presence on Broadway. In 1978, he won the Tony Award for Best Actor in Da, playing a father haunted by memoria role he would later reprise on film. Though he acted in everything from Midnight Cowboy to Tron, his heart remained in the theater. In his final years, Hughes battled Alzheimer's disease, which slowly took away the very faculty that had defined his extraordinary career. He passed away in 2006, just 5 days before his 91st birthday. His legacy is one of humility, grace, and quiet power. He was never loud, never flashy, but always unforgettable. Bea Arthur's arrival as Maud Finlay was like a thunderclap-sharp, commanding, impossible to ignore. A fierce feminist foil to Archie Bunker's outdated views, Maud resonated so strongly with audiences that she quickly spun off into her own hit show. Bea's portrayal was trailblazing bold, brainy, and unapologetically progressive. But Bea Arthur, born Bernice Frankel, was more than just a television icon. She was a trailblazer in real life, as well one of the first female U.S. Marines during World War II and a lifelong advocate for civil rights, LGBTQ+ causes, and animal welfare. Her comedic timing was razor-sharp, her presence towering, and her voice unmistakable. Yet, despite her fierce public persona, Arthur was intensely private. She often struggled with depression and the pressure of being typecast, yearning to be seen beyond her sarcastic on-screen image. In her later years, she continued to support causes close to her heart, even donating millions to help homeless LGBTQ+ youth in New York. When she died of lung cancer in 2009 at age 86, Broadway dimmed its lights in her memory. Her ashes were scattered at sea-fitting for a woman who defied convention, loved deeply, and left behind a legacy as fearless and uncontainable as the ocean itself. Andy Griffith wasn't just the lead, he was the show's moral compass. With a warm voice and a steady presence, he made Sheriff Andy Taylor feel like the dad, mentor, and neighbor we all wish we had. But while millions saw a calm and grounded man on television, Andy's private life was far from peaceful. Born in Mount Airy, North Carolina town that would inspire Mayberry Griffith's southern roots, shaped his identity. At age 34, he stepped into the role of Andy Taylor and became a national symbol of wisdom and kindness. But his family life carried deep wounds. He adopted 2 children with his first wife, Barbara, but struggled to save his son, Andy Jr., who battled alcoholism and died tragically at just 38. That loss haunted him for the rest of his life. In the 1980s, Griffith was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, leaving him temporarily paralyzed. After months of grueling therapy, he returned to television as lawyer Ben Matlock, another role that brought him fame and financial success. But inside, friends say he often sat alone for hours, quietly grieving, carrying pain from failed marriages and the death of his son. Andy Griffith died at 86 from a heart attack, buried just hours later on Roanoke Island per his wishes. No funeral, no fanfare, a private end to a public life. Frances Bavier brought Aunt Bee to life with warmth, humor, and a touch of sternness that made her feel real. But behind that loving character was a woman who struggled with typecasting, regret, and isolation. A former Broadway actress with sharp wit and intelligence, Bavier felt trapped by the role that made her famous. She clashed with Andy Griffith behind the scenes, and only 4 months before her death did she call him to apologize. "The role consumed me," she admitted. She never married or had children. After retiring, she lived alone in a modest house in Siler City, North Carolina, with a dozen cats. Locals rarely saw her, yet she quietly left $100,000 to the town's police force, a final act of gratitude that matched her character's spirit. She died at 86, suffering from multiple health issues. Though her estate was modest by Hollywood standards, her legacy was far richer in heart. Nobody made America laugh like Don Knotts. His portrayal of Barney Fife, anxious, trigger-happy deputy with just one, bullet earned him 5 Emmy Awards and endless love from fans. But the joy he gave us often came from deep, personal pain. Raised in poverty in West Virginia, Knotts endured a traumatic childhood. His father, suffering from schizophrenia, once held a knife to Don's throat. After his father died, Don grew up withdrawn and insecure, using comedy as a lifeline. He married 3 times, fathered a daughter, but often felt inadequate as a husband and father. Despite his success, he was plagued by anxiety, hypochondria, and loneliness. In his final years, he suffered near blindness due to macular degeneration and withdrew from public life. He died in Los Angeles at age 81 from complications of lung cancer. He was buried near John Ritter, his close friend and co-star on Three's Compagnon Man Don, considered a son. His gravestone features Barney Fife, a role that never really left him. Howard McNear's portrayal of Floyd, the lovable and endlessly talkative barber, gave the show some of its most charming moments. But in 1963, tragedy struck, suffered a massive stroke that paralyzed the left side of his body. Remarkably, Andy Griffith brought him back to the show. He was filmed sitting down, propped up with props and clever staging. His dedication was inspiring, but it came at a cost. He suffered breakdowns, forgot lines, and eventually had to leave the show. He died from pneumonia at age 63. His bravery, quiet suffering, and determination to keep working made him a true, unsung hero of Mayberry. Thelma Lou was love, loyalty, and warmth wrapped in a Southern charm, and so was Betty Lynn. On The Andy Griffith Show, she gave Barney Fafond Vuorsa gentle heart to believe in. But Betty's early years were far from idyllic. She was born into a troubled home. Her mother fled an abusive marriage while pregnant with Betty, hiding in fear. Raised by her maternal grandparents, Betty learned resilience early. She found escape in music and acting, joining the USO to perform for troops during World War II, often under dangerous conditions in the Far East. She sang, danced, and brought laughter to soldiers, earning their deep gratitude and admiration. Though she once got engaged, Betty never married. Instead, she gave her love to other Shermother, friends, fans, and later to the town of Mount Airy, North Carolina, where she moved in her final years. There, she became a living part of Mayberry's legacy, always smiling, sharing memories, and attending fan events with sincere affection. Even in her 90s, Betty remained spirited and sharp, working on her memoir and meeting admirers until her final days. She died at 95, peacefully and surrounded by the town that embraced her as one of their own. Her life was a quiet, triumphant journey from hardship to joy, anchored by the simple grace of being kind. Otis Campbell, Mayberry's lovable town drunk, could have easily been a one-note character. But thanks to Hal Smith's genius, Otis became a fan favorite man who staggered through the town jail with dignity, comedy, and surprising layers of humanity. Hal Smith was a voice actor, character actor, and World War II veteran. After the war, he built a strong career in radio and television, voicing beloved characters like Winnie the Pooh and Owl for Disney and Goofy for commercials. Yet, Otis remained his most iconic live-action role. In real life, Hal was a devout Christian and a non-drinker, making his portrayal of Otis even more impressive. He often visited children's hospitals in character, using his fame to spread joy. Hal passed away at 77 from a heart attack in Santa Monica. Fans remember him as the man who made even the town drunk feel loved. Howard Sprague, the mild-mannered county clerk with a nervous laugh and a heart of gold, may have seemed like just another quirky Mayberry resident, but actor Jack Dodson brought a depth and humanity to the role that made Howard unforgettable. A stage-trained actor with impressive theater roots, Dodson had serious dramatic chops that often went unnoticed beneath the show's comedic surface. Off-screen, Jack was a devoted family man, married to actress Mary Dodson, who worked as a set designer and script supervisor. Their 35-year marriage was strong and private-teen oasis in a demanding industry. Jack avoided the Hollywood scene and sought joy in low-key living, often spending his free time gardening, reading, and acting in small theater productions. When he was diagnosed with cancer in the early 1990s, Jack chose to fight it on his own terms. He declined aggressive treatments, not out of despair, but from a desire to spare his loved ones the pain and disruption. He continued working, even appearing on shows like St. Elsewhere and Newhart, never letting on about the struggle he was enduring. He passed away at 63, quietly and without fanfare, but those who knew him remember a man of gentle humor, quiet strength, and deep integrity. His legacy lives on not just in Howard Sprague's character, but in the quiet dignity with which he lived and left this world. Few people expected a woman in her late 50s to become one of Mayberry's most endearing voices, but Hope Summers defied expectations in every way. As Clara Edwards, she played the well-meaning, slightly nosy neighbor with warmth and perfect comedic timing, but her journey to television stardom was anything but typical. Hope was a widow who had raised children on her own, having lost her husband when her kids were still young. Before stepping into the spotlight, she was a dedicated teacher and community theater director in rural Illinois. Her passion for performance was always alive, even when life demanded practicality. Her television career began in earnest in the 1950s, when most actresses were already being shown the door. She broke through not with glamour, but with character. Her voice became famous nationwide as the original voice of Mrs. Butterworth in syrup commercials. She also appeared on The Rifleman, Gunsmoke, and The Mary Tyler Moore Show, always bringing a believable human warmth to her roles. Hope worked steadily until shortly before her death at age 77. She passed peacefully, having lived a rich and meaningful life that defied the narrow roles often prescribed to women of her generation. On and off screen, she embodied kindness, courage, and grace. Her legacy is a quiet reminder that sometimes greatness finds us when we least expect if we're willing to answer the call. To viewers of The Andy Griffith Show, the arrival of Briscoe Darling and his musically chaotic clan always meant one thing: memorable mischief and Appalachian magic. With a grizzled face, dry wit, and ever-present banjo, Denver Pyle gave life to Briscoe's strong, silent patriarch whose gruff exterior hid an unexpectedly tender heart. Off-screen, Denver Pyle's journey was as rugged and fascinating as any character he played. Before acting, he worked as a laborer in the oil fields and proudly served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. He didn't break into Hollywood until the late 1940s, when he began appearing in dozens of westerns, dramas, and B-movies. But it was television first in The Andy Griffith Show, and later as Uncle Jesse in The Dukes of Hazzard, that brought him enduring fame. Yet Pyle never let stardom go to his head. Beneath the gruff screen, persona was a man of deep conviction and immense generosity. Throughout his life, he remained committed to supporting veterans, and later in his career, he quietly became one of the most philanthropic actors of his era. Few fans knew that his final public act was a profound one. He donated millions to a college scholarship fund for underprivileged youth, believing deeply in the power of education to transform lives. Denver Pyle passed away on Christmas Day, 1997 from lung cancer at age 77. A quiet exit for a man who had given so much laughter and life to television. He didn't need awards or headlines. His legacy lives on every time someone chuckles at Briscoe's deadpan wisdom or strums a banjo in tribute. He was more than a character actor. He was a storyteller, a patriot, and a generous soul who never stopped giving. When Charlene Darling lit up the screen with her bright eyes, sweet smile, and angelic singing voice, she didn't just entertain, she enchanted. Played by the radiant Maggie Peterson, Charlene was the heart of the Darling family. tender, headstrong, and completely unforgettable. Maggie's role on The Andy Griffith Show was small in screen time but massive in impact. Her chemistry with Andy and her charming musical duets brought a sense of authenticity and warmth that became some of the show's most beloved moments. With her natural comedic timing and genuine musical gifts, Maggie made Charlene more than a mountain girl, she made her real. Off-camera, Maggie's life was just as fascinating. A gifted vocalist, she toured the country with the Ernie Mariani Trio, performing in nightclubs and television variety shows before Hollywood took notice. Later, when she stepped away from the spotlight, she pivoted to a behind-the-scenes role, working as a respected location scout in Las Vegas for film and television production's second career that few fans ever knew about. Her life took a quieter turn when she left the industry to care for her ailing husband, jazz musician Gus Mancuso. Though she disappeared from the public eye, she remained active in fan circles and Andy Griffith reunions. Maggie never sought fame-only connection, kindness, and authenticity. She found all three. When she passed away in 2022 at the age of 81, tributes poured in from generations of fans. She had lived a full life, but her presence on screen remains as timeless as ever. Even now, Charlene's sweet mountain melodies echo across reruns, a reminder of a simpler, sweeter time and of the woman who brought them to life. George Lindsay will always be remembered for his lovable portrayal of Goober Pyle on The Andy Griffith Show, a wide-eyed, grinning auto mechanic with a heart of gold and a laugh that could melt the hardest of days. With his signature overalls and affable southern drawl, Goober embodied small-town simplicity, joy, and comedic charm. He was the kind of character audiences didn't just laugh at, they cherished him like an old friend. But behind the cheerful facade of Goober was a man of great depth and ambition. Lindsay grew up in rural Alabama with dreams that stretched far beyond comedic typecasting. A graduate of Florence State Teachers College and an aspiring serious actor, he initially envisioned himself as an educator or dramatic stage performer. He even studied at the American Theater Wing in New York, honing his craft in hopes of bringing layered characters to life. However, the explosive popularity of The Andy Griffith Show and later Hee Haw pigeonholed him into a comedic mold that he couldn't quite break out of. Hollywood, as it often does, saw only one side of him. Though audiences adored Goober, Lindsay longed for opportunities to show the world more of what he could do. His dreams of complex roles were quietly shelved, and his creative frustrations, though rarely voiced, were deeply felt. Outside of acting, Lindsay's life was a mix of highs and solitary lows. His marriage to Joanne Herbert ended in divorce, and he spent much of his later life alone, yet he never let that solitude harden his heart. On the contrary, he became one of Alabama's most generous philanthropists, donating over $1 million to the Special Olympics and endowing scholarships for underprivileged youth. To many in his hometown, he was more than a celebrity, he was a hometown hero. He passed away peacefully at the age of 83. His estate was modest, not reflective of a man who had once been a television staple, but he left behind something far more valuable than money. He left behind love. In a fitting tribute, a road in his hometown of Jasper, Alabama now bears his name, a small but lasting symbol of the joy he gave to millions. George Lindsay may have spent a career in someone else's shadow, but he walked through life shining his own quiet light. Helen Crump, the poised and perceptive schoolteacher of The Andy Griffith Show, was more than just Andy Taylor's love interest, she was the emotional center of Mayberry. Helen represented dignity, intellect, and quiet power, a woman who could hold her ground with kindness and command respect without ever raising her voice. That grace came from the woman who played her, Anita Corso, a deeply thoughtful actress whose real life mirrored the introspection of her most famous role. Annetta wasn't your typical television starlet of the 1960s. She was classically trained, having studied drama at Northwestern University before diving into the world of method acting with none other than Lee Strasberg, the legendary mentor to Marlon Brando and Al Pacino. Anita brought a level of emotional truth to Helen Crump that made her stand out in a genre filled with caricatures. You didn't watch Helen, you believed in her. Despite her talent, Annetta was never one to chase the limelight. She turned down publicity, kept her private life sealed from reporters, and remained unmarried, childless, and content to live quietly. But behind the quiet image lay one of Mayberry's most enduring and whispered secrets, a real-life romantic relationship between Anita and her co-star, Andy Griffith. Though Andy was married at the time, several biographies and crew accounts later confirmed that the two shared a deep, passionate, and private love that spanned several years. Their relationship was cloaked in discretion, fiercely protected from gossip columns and fanfare. Professionally, Annetta continued acting in various television roles, most notably as a recurring character in Matlock, where she reunited with Griffith years later. Yet to fans, she would always be Helen Crump. Despite that association, Annetta never sought to escape it. She embraced it quietly, knowing the role had left a meaningful imprint on American hearts. When she was diagnosed with cancer in the mid-1990s, she made no public announcements, no pleas for sympathy, no interviews. She simply stepped away from public life. On the 6th of November, 1995, just 3 days after her 62nd birthday, she passed away quietly. There were no grand obituaries, no celebrity tributes, or red carpet memorials. Just a silence that somehow suited her, dignified, respectful, and profound. In life and in death, Anita Corsaut remained the epitome of Grecian actress who never needed noise to be heard, never needed spectacle to shine. She was loved quietly, remembered deeply, and admired eternally. He only appeared in 5 episodes, just 5, but Ernest T. Bass left an impact so loud, so chaotic, and so wildly entertaining that he became one of the most iconic characters in the Andy Griffith Show's entire run. With his manic energy, gravelly voice, and signature rock-throwing tantrums, Bass was Mayberry's most unpredictable guest-a-lovable rascal, with no filter and no breaks. And behind that whirlwind was the genius of Howard Morris, a man whose comedic timing was unmatched. Morris's portrayal of Ernest T. was a masterclass in controlled chaos. Every twitch, every snarl, every offbeat line delivery was crafted with purpose. Though Bass was the town's comic tornado, Morris brought him to life with a strange sort of innocent sea-man who didn't quite fit into society but desperately wanted to be accepted. That's what made audiences love him. He was ridiculous, yes, but he was also vulnerable. What many fans didn't know was that Howard Morris was also a respected director and voice actor whose creative reach went far beyond Ernest T. He directed numerous episodes of classic sitcoms like Hogan's Heroes and The Andy Griffith Show itself. In animation, his voice gave life to beloved characters in the Flintstones, the Jetsons, and Archie Comics cartoons. His comedic instincts were so sharp, so naturally attuned to rhythm and surprise, that he could move effortlessly between mediums. And yet, for all his on-screen bravado, Morris was known among peers as a gentle, soft-spoken soul. Offstage, he was kind, introspective, and deeply appreciative of his craft. He didn't crave celebrity, thrived on creativity. His passing in 2005 from heart failure at the age of 85 marked the end of an era, but his legacy continues wherever there's a burst of laughter from Ernest T's unforgettable outbursts. Howard Morris showed us that even the wildest characters can come from the kindest hearts. He made us laugh, startled us with joy, and reminded us that a little chaos now and then can be a beautiful thing. To the casual viewer, Emmett Clark, the mild-mannered fix-it-shop owner, may have seemed like just another background character in Mayberry. But those who watched closely saw the subtle genius of Paul Hartman, a performer whose artistry was in the quiet beats, the offhand glances, and the perfectly timed reactions. Before he arrived in Mayberry, Hartman was already a legend on Broadway. Alongside his wife Grace, he starred in dance reviews and earned a Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical. In the 1940s and 1950s, he was hailed as one of America's greatest stage performance and innovator in comedic dance and physical storytelling. By the time he joined The Andy Griffith Show, Hartman was older, his Broadway years behind him, but even in his later roles, he brought dignity and professionalism. As Emmett, he offered a steady presence, counterbalance to the town's quirkier characters. He wasn't loud or flashy, but he anchored the scenes with his calm demeanor and quiet humor. Off-screen, Hartman was known as a kind, thoughtful man who carried himself with humility, despite a resume most actors would envy. He didn't need the spotlight, simply loved the work. Sadly, Hartman died of a heart attack in 1973 at the age of 69. His passing was largely overshadowed by other Hollywood news at the time, but those who knew his contributions never forgot them. His legacy is quieter than most, but no less profound. Paul Hartman reminded us that not all heroes of the stage and screen shout. Some, like Emmett Clark, simply show up, do their job, and make everyone around them shine a little brighter. In the whimsical town of Mayberry, where common sense ruled the day, Mayor Roy Stoner often felt like the one square peg in a round hole. Played by the wonderfully expressive Parley Baer, Stoner was the embodiment of old-school bureaucracy earnest, occasionally overbearing, and frequently baffled by Andy Taylor's laid-back wisdom. His presence added a layer of comic tension to the show, a reminder that even in the friendliest towns, red tape could still find its way in. But there was far more to Parley Baer than his role as the befuddled mayor. Long before he arrived in Mayberry, Baer had carved out a legendary career in the golden age of radio, most famously voicing Chester on the original Gunsmoke radio series for nearly 10 years. His voice became a staple in American households, conveying everything from deep emotion to quick-fire wit. In a time before television dominated, Baer was one of the country's most recognizable audio actors. Transitioning to television and film, Baer compiled an astounding 250-plus credits over his career, effortlessly moving between comedies, dramas, and even animated series. His versatility made him a sought-after character actor, but he never let fame define him. Off-screen, Baer was a pillar of his community, deeply committed to civic engagement, arts advocacy, and mentoring the next generation of performers. Young actors often recalled how he took time to offer encouragement, feedback, or just a kind word between scenes. Parley Baer passed away at the age of 88, leaving behind a career that spanned radio, television, and film, a body of work that celebrated storytelling in all its forms. Though his face may not be as instantly recognizable as some of his co-stars, his impact on the entertainment industry is undeniable. In Mayberry, he may have played the well-meaning obstacle, but in real life, he was a bridge builder between generations, mediums, and hearts. Gerald Isaac Jerry Stiller wasn't just a comedian, he was a legend who found his second wind later in life and proved that it's never too late to make your greatest mark. Born to poor Jewish immigrants in Depression-era Brooklyn, Stiller grew up amidst struggle, humor, and resilience. He came of age during World War II, putting his dreams on hold to serve his country. After the war, he studied theater under the GI Bill and entered show business, where fate introduced him to Ann Mira. Their marriage was more than romantic, it was professional magic. As the beloved comedy duo Stiller and Mira, they lit up nightclubs, television screens, and the hearts of millions throughout the 1960s and 70s. But behind the scenes, the demands of fame took a toll. Their marriage nearly collapsed under pressure until they made a bold choice, stepping away from the spotlight to focus on each other and their growing family, including future star Ben Stiller. Then came Seinfeld. At the age of 66, when many actors fade into retirement, Stiller was cast as Frank Costanza, George's volatile, eccentric, and utterly hilarious father. It was a role he initially hesitated to take, but once he did, his over-the-top delivery and manic energy became the stuff of television legend. His signature shout, "Serenity now!" became a pop culture catchphrase. His performance earned him a Primetime Emmy nomination and breathed new life into his career. But more than accolades, it gave him the joy of making people laugh again. After Seinfeld, he kept the laughs going as Arthur Spooner in The King of Queens, playing yet another lovable curmudgeon. Off-screen, he remained a devoted husband to Anne until her death in 2015. Their love spanned over 6 decades, a rarity in Hollywood, and a testament to patience, forgiveness, and deep affection. Jerry Stiller passed away on May 11, 2020, at the age of 92. Though his characters often shouted, barked, and blustered, those who knew him described him as warm, thoughtful, and deeply kind. He left behind a legacy not only of laughter, but of enduring love, resilience, and reinvention. Cosmo Kramer didn't just burst into Jerry's apartment, exploded into pop culture. With his signature wild hair, flailing limbs, and surreal logic, Michael Richards turned Kramer into one of the most unforgettable characters in television history. Every entrance, every pratfall, every outlandish idea was a masterclass in physical comedy. Richards' commitment was so complete, so fearless, that he earned 3 consecutive Emmy Awards and the admiration of comedy legends. But the man behind the slapstick had a more complex story. Born in Culver City, California, Michael Richards was a Vietnam War veteran who later trained at the prestigious California Institute of the Arts. He was a thoughtful and deeply committed performer, one who saw comedy as both art and discipline. Before Seinfeld, he had made a name for himself on Fridays and in supporting roles, but it was Kramer that changed everything, seemingly overnight. Yet, fame can be both a gift and a curse. In 2006, during a stand-up set at the Laugh Factory, Richards erupted in a racially charged rant in response to Heckler's outburst caught on camera and widely circulated. The backlash was immediate and unforgiving. Despite an emotional apology, his public image was irreparably damaged, and his career all but vanished overnight. The fall from grace was devastating. Once the darling of network television, Richards became a cautionary tale. For years, he withdrew from the spotlight entirely, living a quiet, reclusive life. He declined most interviews, retreated from the industry, and stayed far away from social media. Many fans were left wondering if they'd ever see the man behind Kramer again. But in 2009, and more recently in the final season of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Richards cautiously stepped back into the public eye. He gamely poked fun at himself, at the infamous Seinfeld finale, and at his own fall from grace, perhaps not as a comeback, but as an act of reconciliation with a public that once adored him. Michael Richards remains one of television's most enigmatic figure-son actor whose rise was meteoric, whose fall was tragic, and whose talent, when at its peak, redefined what comedy could look like. Kramer may be his most enduring legacy, but the lessons surrounding Richards' journey of fame, failure, and redemption linger just as deeply. Estelle Harris had one of the most unmistakable voices in television history, sharp, shrill, and endlessly expressive. As Estelle Costanza, the long-suffering, high-decibel matriarch of George's neurotic family, she delivered comedic gold with every exasperated screech and eye roll. Yet, unlike many of her Seinfeld co-stars, Harris didn't find fame early. She didn't even seriously pursue acting until her 40s, having devoted her earlier years to raising her children. Her career began in commercials and small roles, but it wasn't until 1992 at age 65 that she joined the Seinfeld cast. Her chemistry with Jerry Stiller was instant, electric, and unforgettable. Together, they became one of sitcom history's most outrageously funny couples, often stealing scenes and delivering some of the show's most iconic moments. Off-screen, Estelle was a soft-spoken, nurturing woman, the complete opposite of her loudmouth character. She was married to her beloved husband, Cy Harris, for nearly 70 years, a love story rarely seen in the entertainment world. He passed away in 2021, and she followed just a year later, peacefully in her sleep at the age of 93. Beyond Seinfeld, Harris reached younger generations by voicing Mrs. Potato Head in the Toy Story films, endearing her to millions of children worldwide. She also appeared in dozens of sitcoms, animated series, and films, often bringing her signature flair to every role. Estelle Harris was a shining example of late-blooming brilliance. She proved that it's never too late to embrace your passion, to be seen, and to make millions laugh. Her work lives on, but even more so does the joy she brought to families everywhere. George Costanza was selfish, neurotic, dishonest, and absolutely beloved. Jason Alexander's portrayal of this balding, neurotic everyman gave Seinfeld much of its nervous energy and razor-sharp humor. Inspired by co-creator Larry David's real-life personality, George was a character that walked the line between pitiful and oddly profound. And through him, Alexander created one of the greatest sitcom characters of all time. Born J. Scott Greenspan in Newark, New Jersey, Alexander began his career on the Broadway stage, where he quickly rose to acclaim. By the time Seinfeld debuted in 1989, he was already a Tony Award-winning performer, but Seinfeld changed the trajectory of his life forever. After the show's massive success, Alexander, like many of his castmates, encountered the dreaded typecasting trap. To many, he wasn't Jason Alexander, he was George, and only George. Sitcoms that followed Bob Patterson, Listen Up, failed to capture the same magic, but Alexander was far from finished. He returned to the theater, where he directed and starred in acclaimed productions and earned praise for his versatility, from musicals to Shakespearean drama. In addition to his stage work, Alexander carved out a niche as a guest star on countless television shows, from Curb Your Enthusiasm to The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and even in animated voice roles. He's also become an outspoken activist for social and political causes, known for his thoughtful and articulate public statements. Despite the long shadow cast by George Costanza, Jason Alexander has embraced his legacy with grace. He continues to work, evolve, and inspire, proving that being forever linked to an iconic character doesn't have to be a limitation. Instead, it can be a foundation. Before he ever stepped in front of a camera, Barney Martin had already lived a remarkable life. A native New Yorker, he served as a U.S. Air Force navigator in World War II, then spent 2 decades as a detective with the NYPD. Policing the streets of New York by day and telling stories by night, Martin brought to acting the kind of grounded wisdom and authenticity that can't be faked. He didn't join Seinfeld until the show's 2nd season, taking over the role of Morty Seinfeld, Jerry's stubborn, cost-conscious, and fiercely opinionated father. But once he did, he became an instant fan favorite. From his battles with condo boards in Del Boca Vista to his invention of the beltless trench coat, Morty was a classic sitcom dad, gruff but loving and always good for a laugh. Martin had already built a solid resume in theater and film before Seinfeld made him a household name. One of his most notable performances was on Broadway in Chicago, 1976, where he played the role of Amos Hart, singing the show-stopping number Mr. Cellophane. The song about a man who's often overlooked was an ironic mirror of Martin's own career, never flashy, but always unforgettable. Despite his success, Barney Martin lived a quiet life far from the Hollywood spotlight. He was never one for fame or celebrity. He preferred a simple life surrounded by family and close friends. His dry wit, warm eyes, and impeccable timing made him a beloved colleague and a gentle presence on set. He passed away on the 21st of March, 2005, at the age of 82. Though Morty Seinfeld was just one role in a long and varied career, it was the one that ensured Barney Martin would forever be remembered as the father who told it like it was, with love, with humor, and without spending a penny more than necessary. With just 15 episodes, Len Lesser managed to etch himself into television history as the endlessly enthusiastic, wildly gesturing Uncle Leo, whether it was his trademark, "Jerry, hello!" yelled across a room, or his hilariously misplaced pride in petty family drama Uncle Leo became an unforgettable piece of Seinfeld's universe. But behind the comedic bravado was a man with a rich and quietly heroic life. Born in the Bronx to Jewish immigrants, Lesser graduated from college at just 19 years old. Everything changed on the 7th of December, 1941. The day after the attack on Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the U.S. Army, serving honorably during World War II. After the war, Lesser returned to civilian life and began the long, often thankless grind of character acting. For decades, he worked behind the scenes, appearing in dozens of films and television shows, often without credit, often without fanfare. But he brought authenticity and dedication to every role, no matter how small. He worked with legends like Clint Eastwood and Steve McQueen, yet remained humble, never chasing the spotlight. Seinfeld finally changed all that. Cast as Jerry's overbearing and hilariously clueless Uncle Leo, Lesser stole scenes with his booming voice and physical comedy. His character became a cultural reference point, proof that even side characters could become icons when portrayed with heart and comedic precision. Fans loved him, critics praised him, and for Lesser, it was sweet validation late in life. Despite his fame, Len Lesser remained soft-spoken and deeply kind in real life, nothing like his screen persona. He passed away peacefully on the 16th of February, 2011, at the age of 88. With his passing, Seinfeld fans didn't just lose Uncle Leon, they lost a symbol of perseverance, patriotism, and the quiet grind of a true working actor finally getting his due. Richard Herd was already a seasoned actor with a commanding presence when he joined Seinfeld as Mr. Wilhelm George Costanza's stone-faced boss at the Yankees. Equal parts inscrutable and absurd, Wilhelm was the kind of character who could deliver a straight-faced speech about office policy while being completely untethered from reality. It was comedy gold, and Herd played it with perfect deadpan brilliance. But Herd's own life was no sitcom. Born in Boston during the Great Depression, he endured a painful loss early on. His father died in World War II. Years later, he served during the Korean War and was severely injured, an experience that changed the course of his life. During recovery, Herd discovered theater, and with it, a new purpose. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Richard Herd built a solid career as a dramatic actor. He appeared in landmark films such as All the President's Men, 1976, and The China Syndrome, 1979, and earned legions of sci-fi fans with his work in V, Star Trek, Voyager, and Quantum Leap. His ability to bring gravitas to every role made him a go-to actor for military men, judges, and authority figures. When Seinfeld came calling in the 1990s, Herd embraced the chance to parody those very roles. As Mr. Wilhelm, he flipped the script, playing a seemingly competent executive who, upon closer inspection, was just as clueless as George. His chemistry with Jason Alexander was spot on, and his understated absurdity became a beloved staple of the show's later seasons. Off-screen, Herd was a deeply thoughtful man who loved painting, writing poetry, and mentoring young actors. He considered acting a spiritual endeavor and believed in using art to heal trauma belief born from his own battles with injury and grief. Richard Herd passed away on May 26, 2020, at the age of 87. Though he played many powerful men, it was his humanity, both on-screen and off, that made him unforgettable. To millions of fans, Liz Sheridan was Helen Seinfeld doting, overprotective mother who never stopped defending her son Jerry. She was warm, well-meaning, and hilariously biased. How could anyone not like Jerry? And her every appearance on the show added heart and levity. But behind the affable television mom was a life filled with surprises, artistic passion, and even a brush with one of Hollywood's most iconic legends. Born Elizabeth Ann Sheridan, she didn't reach national fame until her early 60s when Seinfeld cast her as Helen. Though she wasn't a lead, she appeared in 21 episodes and was the only recurring guest character to appear in all 9 seasons. A quiet but telling symbol of her presence and consistency on the show. What many didn't know for years was that Sheridan had once shared a romantic relationship with a young, then unknown James Dean. The two met in New York in the early 1950s, when both were struggling actors. Their whirlwind romance was passionate and formative, but Sheridan kept the story private for decades. In 2000, she finally revealed the details in her memoir, Dizzy and Jimmy, offering a rare, intimate glimpse into the life of the troubled star before he became a legend. Before Seinfeld, Sheridan had already been known to television audiences as the nosy neighbor Raquel Ochmanek on the hit sitcom Alf from 1986 to 1990. A trained dancer, singer, and stage performer, Sheridan lived a multifaceted creative life, but her real happiness came not from fame, but from love. She spent over 40 years with jazz musician Dale Wales, her life partner and musical collaborator. Together, they built a life of quiet joy outside the glare of Hollywood. On the 15th of April, 2022, just 5 days after celebrating her 93rd birthday, Liz Sheridan passed away peacefully. With her, a beloved era of television gently came to a close. She left behind more than just memorable performances. She left the enduring image of a mother who loved deeply, on, screen, and off. Colton Underwood's coming out in 2021 shook reality television fans. Once the poster boy of heterosexual romance on The Bachelor, Colton revealed a more vulnerable truth that he was gay and finally ready to live authentically. Amid the whirlwind of headlines and public reaction, Jordan C. Brown entered the picture not as a rebound or a publicity move, but as Colton's anchor. Jordan, a respected political strategist and LGBTQ+ advocate, offered calm guidance and genuine partnership. The couple married in 2023 in a beautiful, joy-filled celebration that blended Hollywood glitz with heartfelt sincerity. By 2025, Colton and Jordan are more than husbands, they're advocates. They've launched mental health initiatives focused on LGBTQ+ youth, spoken at conferences about coming out later in life, and openly discussed the struggles and triumphs of building a queer identity in the public eye. Their story is proof that even in the most unexpected places, love can grow and flourish when rooted in truth. We didn't just build a family, we built a life. Together since 2004 and married in 2014, Neil and David are practically the gold standard for gay celebrity couples. They're not just two actors in love, they're parents, best friends, business partners, and endlessly supportive of each other's careers. Living in New York City with their twins, Gideon and Harper, the family lives a relatively grounded life despite the fame. They vacation together, co-host parties, and even perform together on occasion. Through all of life's chaos, they keep each other laughing. Timeless love, 32 years apart. When Sarah, now 50, and Holland, currently 82, went public with their relationship in 2015, the media had a field day, but nearly a decade later, their love is stronger than ever. Sarah often praises Holland's intelligence and sense of humor, while Holland calls Sarah the brightest soul I've ever known. Their age difference has never defined them instead. It's their emotional connection, mutual admiration, and creative spirit that hold them together. From Broadway co-stars to loving dads. They met while performing in The Boys in the Band in Broadway and later on Netflix, and the chemistry was undeniable. Took, who already had 2 children via surrogacy, found a perfect partner in Andrew. The couple has since embraced family life, blending parenting with performing and becoming a poster couple for modern gay families. Whether attending school events or award shows, they bring joy and stability to everything they do. We were best friends before we were anything else. Ben and Noah share not only a love story, but a shared Broadway legacy. Both starred in Dear Evan Hansen, and their friendship turned into romance after the curtain closed. Engaged in 2022, the two have continued performing, creating music, and making each other laugh in 2025. They've talked about wanting a small wedding and possibly starting a family. Their relationship is low drama, high love, a rare gem in celebrity culture. Billy Porter's journey has never been easy, but it has always been radiant. A Tony and Emmy winner, fashion icon, and unapologetic truth-teller, Billy has faced some of life's hardest challenges, including childhood trauma, discrimination, and publicly revealing his HIV-positive status. But through every triumph and every heartbreak, one person has remained constant: Adam Smith, his husband, since 2017. Their relationship is not built on red carpet glamour, though. They've had plenty of that. It's built on resilience, trust, and unshakable love. Adam has supported Billy through career highs and emotional lows, quietly standing behind the spotlight while being the emotional pillar Billy needed most. In 2025, the couple continues to advocate for LGBTQ+ visibility, mental health, and the power of healing. Billy and Adam prove that love isn't just romantic, it's enduring, especially when it's tested by life's storms. A love that breaks the binary. Elliot Page's public coming out as transgender in 2020 was a turning point not just for him, but for millions of people around the world. When he and Mae Martin, who identifies as non-binary, began dating in 2023, it felt like a moment of magic. Both have spoken openly about gender identity, mental health, and queer joy. In 2025, they remain one of the most powerful and refreshingly authentic couples in the entertainment world, frequently using their platforms to advocate for trans rights and queer visibility. Some of these couples have split, others never tied the knot, but their love stories still left a mark. Which couple stood out to you the most? Drop a comment below. A beautiful love that survived heartbreak. Ricky and Juan's relationship took a heartbreaking turn in 2023 when they announced their separation after 6 years of marriage. But time, reflection, and shared parenting slowly brought them back together. In 2025, they are reportedly reconciled and focusing on co-parenting their 4 children while rekindling their bond away from the spotlight. It's a quiet second chapter built on healing and maturity that fans are cheering for. What started as a quiet spark on the set of Orange is the New Black evolved into one of the most touching love stories in modern queer history. Lauren Morelli, then a writer for the hit Netflix series, was coming to terms with her identity while crafting stories about self-discovery. Amid that journey, she met actress Samira Wiley, who portrayed the beloved Pusey Washington. Their connection was immediate, honest, and deeply personal. Lauren's decision to come out while working on the show was courageous and life-altering. As she embraced her truth, Samira stood beside her, offering unwavering support and joy. The two married in a stunning 2017 ceremony, surrounded by friends, family, and fellow creatives. In 2021, they welcomed their first child, a daughter who became the heart of their world. Today, in 2025, Samira and Lauren balance Hollywood and motherhood with grace. They remain refreshingly down-to-earth, choosing authenticity over flash. Their love is rooted in friendship, growth, and mutual respect, a reminder that when you live your truth, love often finds you. Power, passion, purpose. That's the energy Lena Waithe and Cynthia Erivo bring not just to their work, but to each other. Rumors of their romance began to swirl in 2023, but by 2025, there's no doubt these two are a force. Lena, an Emmy-winning writer and producer known for her unflinching storytelling, and Cynthia, a powerhouse actress and singer with a Tony, Grammy, and an Oscar nomination to her name, are redefining what queer Black excellence looks like. Though intensely private, they don't shy away from showing up for one another, whether it's Cynthia cheering Lena's new show at a premiere, or Lena proudly sharing Cynthia's performance on social media. They are each other's cheerleaders, collaborators, and quiet sanctuary. In a world obsessed with oversharing, Lena and Cynthia let their legacy speak louder than words. They're not just lovers, they're trailblazers who uplift, protect, and empower. Together, they remind us that love isn't always loud, but it is always powerful. When Emmy-nominated actress Niecy Nash surprised the world in 2020 by announcing her marriage to musician Jessica Betts, it wasn't just another Hollywood headline, it was a cultural moment. Known for her roles in Claws and Reno 911, Niecy had always been seen as a straight ally. But her love for Jessica wasn't about label sit, it was about truth. She simply followed her heart. Since then, Niecy and Jessica have become a beacon for queer Black love, joyful, proud, and fearless. From performing together on stage to laughing their way through interviews, the couple radiates a chemistry that's playful, supportive, and deeply rooted in friendship. In 2025, they continue to walk red carpets hand in hand, releasing music, telling their love story in interviews, and showing the world that queer love can be bold, beautiful, and revolutionary. Their union isn't just romantic, it's trailblazing. JoJo Siwa burst into the spotlight with bows, glitter, and unshakable confidence, but she's grown up, and her evolution has inspired millions. Now, in her early 20s, JoJo is more self-assured than ever, and her romance with Outer Banks star Madison Bailey feels like the perfect match for her energy. After months of speculation, JoJo and Madison confirmed their relationship in early 2025, and ever since, they've embraced the spotlight with a refreshing honesty. Their TikToks are playful and candid, their interviews sincere and filled with admiration for one another. To Gen Z queer youth, they're role models not because they're perfect, but because they're real. In a world that often tries to silence or shame young LGBTQ+ people, JoJo and Madison live loudly, love freely, and remind everyone that the future of queer love is vibrant, joyful, and unapologetic. The world watched Lil Nas X come into his own with bold hits, boundary-pushing videos, and fearless queer representation. But behind the music and memes was a tender love story that started and paused with dancer Yai Ariza. The couple broke up in 2021, citing the pressures of fame and timing. Still, fans couldn't forget the chemistry they once shared. Fast forward to 2024, Nas and Yai began appearing at events together again, exchanging subtle glances and dance floor reunions. By mid-2025, they haven't confirmed anything official, but it's clear the spark never died. They're older now, wiser, and less interested in spectacle. Whether they're rebuilding as friends, partners, or something in between, their bond feels more deeply rooted in a shared past and a hopeful present. In a world obsessed with labels and certainty, Nas and Yai remind us that love doesn't always follow a script. Sometimes it's messy, complicated, and absolutely worth fighting for. Angelica Ross has long been a trailblazer in the fight for trans rights and representation. From her standout role in Pose to her leadership in tech and advocacy, she's one of the most respected voices in the movement. In Toni Michelle Williams, a fellow activist and dynamic community organizer, Angelica found not just love, but a partner in purpose. Together, they're rewriting the narrative of what it means to be Black, trans, powerful, and in love. They've co-launched programs supporting trans youth, led marches, and spoken truth to power in spaces that once excluded them. Their relationship is as intimate as it is impactful, a mix of late-night strategizing, shared dreams, and stolen moments of peace amid the chaos. In 2025, they continue to push boundaries and uplift others hand in hand. Their love isn't just romantic, it's revolutionary. They're proof that when love is rooted in justice, it becomes a force the world can't ignore. Jonathan Bennett made a generation swoon as Aaron Samuels in Mean Girls, but his real-life romance with James Vaughn is even more heartwarming than a Hollywood script. Their chemistry is electric, their joy contagious. When they tied the knot in 2022 in a dreamy beachside ceremony in Mexico, it felt like the ending and beginning of a perfect romantic comedy. James, a charismatic television host and creative, has been Jonathan's rock, collaborator, and best friend. Together, they've become one of LGBTQ+ media's most beloved power couple-shosting red carpet events, speaking at Pride festivals, and co-founding LGBTQ+ friendly travel experiences for couples like them. In 2025, their love hasn't dimmed, it's grown. Whether cuddled up on social media, dancing at charity galas, or filming cheerful travel vlogs, Jonathan and James radiate positivity. They're more than just a cute couple, they're a symbol of what it means to find joy, purpose, and home in another person.